So I very recently made a video where I rated every single bench press variation that I think is useful for increasing your bench press. And I talked about the touch and go bench press being really bad, but I figured I wanted to make a separate video just about that. So all in all, I think it really comes down to three main reasons. But first of all, I want to make clear that the other option that we're talking about, if it's not the touch and go, is the pause bench press. So we're comparing the touch and go to the pause bench press here. So reason number three why the touch and go bench press is worse than the pause bench press is we're going to use more load on that, meaning we're going to get way more fatigue from that. You often hear so many people speaking about we want to get the maximum amount of stimulus from the lowest amount of weight that we can. But doing the touch and go bench press is the exact opposite of that. Reason number two as to why the touch and go is bad is we're actually going to eliminate most of the bottom portion of the lift, which seems to be the hardest portion of the lift for most people. But by doing a touch and go, we can get a bounce the first few centimeters, which actually means we'll move the sticking point up slightly further. So if you're doing a touch and go bench and thinking that your sticking point isn't off the chest, that's probably because you're doing a touch and go bench press where you're bouncing the first few centimeters, that you're not failing right there because you're getting the bounce. But for most people, if you were to pause on the chest and not use momentum out of the pause itself, you're probably going to fail within the first few centimeters. And the reason why that's bad compared to the touch and go bench press is in the touch and go we're going to fail later, which means the sticking point is going to be different, which means the strength carryover is also going to be worse. Now the last point here is again about hypertrophy. What we often see in studies is that the lengthened positioning of a muscle is actually the most hypertrophic positioning of the muscle. And the bench press, that's going to be the bottom portion. So if you're having less focus on that with a touch and go, you're probably also getting rid of that last portion, which is going to be the most important portion for hypertrophy. Now last up, I've hopefully convinced you by now that you need to pause your bench presses, but there's also a specific way and exactly how you should pause the bench presses, and I've made a separate video about that somewhere up here, so go check that out.